Recording has started.
All right. I now call the East Lyme Zoning Commission regular meeting of November 19th, 2020 to order. It is 7:31 p.m. This meeting is being held video conference on Zoom. I'm going to start off by just doing a quick roll call. I think I can see most everybody, but I just want to be able to identify which commissioners are present and also take the time to identify interested parties that are present. I'm going to go through the list of people we're looking for, although I can see a lot of us here. Terry Donovan, I see Terry.
I am here.
Bill Dwyer.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Kim Kay. There's
Here.
Kim. We have Norm Peck. I see
Here.
Norm. Ann Thurlow is not with us tonight. We do have two alternates in attendance, is my understanding. We have Denise Markovitz. I see Denise. And we have George McPherson, and I see George.
Yeah.
Very good. Mr. Liska is not present. Is that correct?
Correct.
Very good. And then we have participating applicants this evening. Harry Heller, attorney for one of the applicants. Yes. And we have Jason Pizzaglia, the applicant. Or Pizzalia. Am I saying that right?
He's in here somewhere.
Yeah. We have attorney Timothy Hollister, attorney for the applicant. And then we have Glenn Russo, who is the applicant in that particular item.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Gomes. I'm an attorney at Shipman and Goodwin. Attorney Hollister could not be here tonight, so I am here in his place just to monitor the deliberations. I believe Mr. Russo is on as well.
He is.
Would you state your name again? Make sure we have that for the record, attorney.
Absolutely, sir. Andrea Gomes, spelled A-N-D-R-E-A, and then the last name is Gomes, G-O-M as in Mary, E-S. I'm an attorney at Shipman and Goodwin. I work with Attorney Hollister.
Very good. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks for the introduction. And moving along to staff, Bill Mulholland. Bill's with us.
Here.
We have attorney Mark Zamarka, town attorney, I believe is present.
Yep.
Obviously Jennifer Lindo, who is running things for us here again and doing a great job. Much appreciated. Brooke Stevens, our recording secretary. I see Brooke. Roseanne Hardy is the ex officio.
She's here.
She is here.
Yep.
All right. So we have everybody here. Very good. And I just wanted to quickly I wanted to thank Terry Donovan in particular for his handling of the last two meetings. Brought myself up to date, but just wanted to thank him publicly and in front of everybody. And I understand he did an exceptionally good job, and it's much appreciated. It's exhausting, Terry, isn't it, too? It's a little exhausting by the end of the day.
It is. Glad to have you back, Mr. Chairman.
Much appreciated. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So we do have a need to seat an alternate before we'll go to guidelines of the Zoom meeting. And just looking at my calendar here, we had Denise, we had George, we had Denise, we had Denise and George on the 11/5 meeting. So I believe we're back to Denise.
Okay.
We'll sit for Ann Thurlow. All right. Moving right along to the guidelines of the Zoom meeting. Just going to read these. Please remember that while unmuted, we can hear you and everything going on around you. We can also see you. Board members and staff will be unmuted during the entire meeting. Number 3 is, as required by executive order, everyone must state their name and where they are from prior to speaking. For example, John Smith, board member. Harry White, if you're a resident, 123 Main Street, each time they speak. During public delegations, Jennifer will open lines for comment. Please wait to be called on to speak. Once you have finished speaking, please mute your microphone or phone. During each agenda item, only the board, staff, and presenters will be unmuted to speak on that particular item. Only one person may speak at a time. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and wait to be called upon. Board members will be called upon to provide comment via a roll call. Members and alternates for all motions, in the interest of making sure we have a clear record, please plan on roll call votes so the public and Brooke taking minutes can be very clear on the record. Only hosts are permitted to share screens at this time. Any documents to be shared must come through Jennifer at jlindo@eltownhall.com. As required by executive order, all documents being discussed and reviewed at the meeting must be posted on the town website no later than 24 hours prior to the meeting. And then lastly, this entire meeting is automatically recorded by Zoom, and upon the host logging out, the meeting will cease and so will the recording. The meeting cannot continue without the host. And with that, we'll move on to public delegations. Public delegations is time set aside for members of the public to address the commission regarding items, topics, subjects not appearing on this evening's agenda. Is there anyone from the public, Jen, that has initiated contact with you that wishes to speak before the commission regarding items, topics, subjects not appearing on tonight's agenda?
I do not have currently anybody with a raised hand.
Okay,
I do have a few people though that are by phone. So I would just like to double check.
take a second. Do that.
Yeah. Barbara, I know you're on. Did you have something you wanted to do for public delegations? You're
No.
muted, so I can't hear you, Barbara.
Okay. All right. Well,
Hold on.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. This is for public delegations, not for anything on the agenda.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
okay.
And then I do have another number on here. 442-8349. If you have something for public delegations, if you could let us know. Did you have something for delegations or are you just listening?
Yeah. 442-8349, she said.
Yep, that's for you. Did you have a comment for public delegation?
No, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. We may carry on?
Yep.
Okay. Moving on to the public hearing segment of tonight's meeting, I will just please note that if you wish to speak during the public comment portion of the public hearing, you must send a message via the Zoom chat feature to Jennifer, and Jennifer will maintain a list of speakers for public comment. And with that, we'll move on to item number 1 in tonight's public hearing segment, which is the continuation of petition of Paz in Construction LLC to rezone 20.24 acres from RU 80 RU 40, its existing zoning designation, to affordable housing district, and for approval of a preliminary site plan which proposes an 80-unit multifamily affordable residential housing development designated as quote unquote Brookside Apartments for property identified on the westerly side of North Brybrook Road in East Lyme Assessors Map 09.0, Lot 37-2, pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 8-30G. And I know that now, Norm, you're going to need to recuse yourself from this one. Is this the?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So we are going to need to see an additional alternate, and that would be George for this public hearing segment, George McPherson.
Okay, I'm back.
You're back, George? Okay, excellent. All right, so Terry, we're going to start. We have a list of exhibits that we need to read for openers, and if you would do. I'm sorry?
If I may, I think we just need to note those exhibits this evening.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
We're,
That's what we're doing, but because I think there was a couple of additions, a couple of late additions, and
Okay.
before we started the meeting, I think, Jen, I designated Terry to just read those. We're just reading those. That's it.
Thank
That
you.
is correct.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, exhibits added. Exhibit L, a staff review of inland wetlands agent / planning director to the zoning staff of North Brybrook Road, zoning application September 2020. Exhibit M, applicant's response to staff comments, November 18th, 2020. Exhibit N, as in Nancy, applicant's revised site plan dated November 17th, 2020. Exhibit O, an operations and maintenance plan dated November 19th, 2020. And P, a third-party review by REMA dated 11/19/2020.
Sorry.
Very good. And I will just note that this is a continuation of a public hearing. I would just advise the audience that the public hearing was kept open to allow additional staff comments this evening. And so at this point, I would ask Attorney Heller to address this in his presentation. And at this point, I'll turn the floor over to Attorney Heller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Harry Heller. I'm an attorney with an office at 736 Route 32 in Uncasville. I'm representing the applicant Paz and Construction LLC. Also with me on the Zoom meeting this evening is Brandon Hanfield from Yannick River Consultants, who is the design and consulting engineer for the project. James Bubaris, who is our traffic engineer for the project, and Jason Pizzalia, the principal of the applicant. And we're all available to answer any questions that any commission members may have.
Thank you.
As the chairman indicated, we presented this application to your commission at your November 5, 2020 meeting. At the conclusion of evidence that evening, the meeting was continued for purposes of allowing the applicant the opportunity to address additional staff review comments that we had received. Those comments have been addressed. We had a subsequent meeting with your staff, both your zoning enforcement officer and representatives of various municipal consulting agencies last Friday, went over the responses to the staff review comments, shared with staff some items of additional concern that staff wanted addressed, and those have been addressed in the items that were entered into the record this evening as items M, N, and O, which is the applicant's response letter, the November 17, 2020 revised site plan, and the operation and maintenance plan, which was submitted into the record to create a benchmark for the future monitoring of the project, both in terms of management of the site itself, as far as maintenance of the site, management of litter, and also as far as the maintenance and upkeep of the stormwater management system for this project, which, as we delineated in detail in our presentation at the November 5 public hearing, is a very sophisticated stormwater management system for this project. I would like to take a couple of minutes to review the phasing for the project, which was something we did not discuss on November 5. The project is, as formulated, is a proposed phase development with 3 phases of development. And those phases are indicated on sheet 5 of 8, I'm sorry, on sheet 1 of 8 of the revised site plan. Phase 1 is the development of the stormwater management infrastructure, which will handle the whole project, but it's all being constructed in phase 1. And it's in the southeasterly portion of the site, and it includes the installation of the infiltration system to handle the first flush of stormwater, both the infiltration, the isolator row, and the additional infiltration beds, and then the stormwater treatment forebay and the detention basin itself. The principal access drive, as well as the emergency access drive for the project, will also be constructed in phase 1, with the principal access drive being on the northerly side of the carved out dwelling house on the property, and the emergency access drive being southerly of that lot. And in conjunction with that, we have made some modifications to that emergency access drive based on input from staff we've narrowed that down to a 20-foot emergency access drive. The emergency access drive will be paved with a binder course of bituminous concrete in phase 1, so that emergency vehicles will have stable access to the property in the event that it is necessary to access the site through the emergency access drive. However, because the emergency access drive will also act as the principal construction entrance for the project, for the development of phases 2 and 3, the bearing course of bituminous concrete will not be applied until the construction of phase 3 has been completed, so that it's not damaged by construction equipment. There are, I believe, 26 units in phase 1 of the project, which are buildings A, B, and C in the northeast corner of the project. Then the second phase will be developed proceeding westerly on the site as you proceed up gradient, and that has 34 units. And then the final phase, phase 3, is in the westerly portion of the site, and that is an additional 20 units. But all of the infrastructure necessary to handle those 2 subsequent phases will all be constructed in phase 1 of the project. So that will be in place whether or not phases 2 and 3 are ever built. The plan has also been modified at the request of staff to delineate the stockpile areas and the staging areas for each phase of development in the project, as well as the area where fueling of construction equipment will occur. There will be no storage of fuels or lubricants on the site, and fueling of equipment will be accomplished by bringing off-site fueling vehicles to the site in order to fuel the construction equipment. Now, with the revised plans, as was entered into the record as Exhibit M, it's the applicant's response to review comments which have been received from the East Lyme Water and Sewer Department, from the town consulting engineer, and from your zoning official. Many of these are technical in nature, but we have submitted what we believe are responses and revised plans that address all of the staff review comments that were elicited during the public hearing and staff review process. We've also submitted into the record a bond estimate for installation and maintenance of erosion and sediment control measures throughout the 3 phases of proposed development, as well as addressing the final engineering comment that we incorporate a contingency factor of 10% into that bond estimate. There was a question that was raised at the November 5 public hearing concerning the intersection of North Bridebrook Road with Connecticut Route 156. And I would ask that Jim Bubaris, who is our traffic consulting engineer, address that at this time.
Can
Very good.
everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. I was asked by Attorney Heller to look and see if we can do some kind of an operational analysis of that intersection, given that the question that was raised. And I looked to see if there were any available traffic counts for that intersection. And unfortunately, I couldn't find any. I looked with the state of Connecticut to see if they had anything in their database. I checked with other consultants who I know, do work in the area. I checked with our own traffic counting service to see if they have anything. And I even looked at our records from the past and all that, but I couldn't find anything. So I can't give you a quantitative analysis of what the impact will be on an operational basis at that intersection. But I will tell you this, my experience with that intersection, having looked at it several times and knowing how it's configured and all, it's an unsignalized intersection. It's a T intersection. It runs with Route 156's east-west, and the North Bride-Brook Road leg is the north leg of the intersection. And what is the southbound approach to Route 156, which is the minor approach, is controlled by a stop sign. And what it does is as you come south on that intersection, to that intersection on North Bride-Brook Road, the intersection flares out. So you basically have some room there to accommodate two lanes, one for left and one for right, although they're not striped that way. What we did, and I mentioned this at the last hearing that we had here, that we estimated that the trip generation for the proposed development, which is 80 units, is quite low. And what we look at as traffic engineers is we look at the commuter peaks on a weekday, because those are typically when a development, especially a residential development, generates its most traffic. And that's typically when that traffic has to interface with what is also the highest on the roads in question. And for residential developments, you have two peaks in the morning, depending on, they start around 7 o'clock and they end around 9 o'clock in the morning. And you have 2 hours there. Depending on where people work, they'll either leave early or they'll leave later in order to travel to work. And then you have two peaks in the afternoon, late afternoon, starting from around 4 o'clock in the afternoon and running till about 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. And again, you have 2 hours. And there again, it's people returning from work, and the closer they live, the sooner they get home, the farther away they, the closer they work to where they live, the sooner they'll get home. The farther away they work, the later they'll come home. So we estimate that the amount of traffic to be generated by this development that will reach that intersection, you also have the development where they can go to the north and work their way up to Route 1. But what we're estimating here is the amount of traffic that will head south to and from the south to reach this particular intersection, we estimate is 50% of the total. And 50% of the total will be about 19 trips in each of those 2 hours in the morning, and about 23 trips during each of those 2 hours in the afternoon. Now, what's a trip? A trip is defined as a one-way vehicular movement traveling either to or from the site. So with 19 to 23 vehicles per hour generated during each of those 4 hours, which will be the 4 highest hours of the day, you basically are adding one vehicle every 3 minutes to the system. And quite frankly, one vehicle per every 3 minutes is a very low addition to what is already there. And quite frankly, I don't think you're even going to notice that it's there, and it's, for the most, it's going to be indiscernible. But I can't give you an operational analysis, not one that has got volumes to back it up. But I will tell you from my experience, I find that Route 156 operates at what we call a level of service A, which is means that the people that are traveling through the intersection on Route 156 are basically uninterrupted. And the traffic coming out of Route 156 is basically operating at a level of service C, which is a pretty good level of service. But my point is no matter what the level of service is today, the minimal amount of traffic that will be added by this development is not going to change that level of service. So what I did look at is the traffic crash experience to see if there's a problem with the accident experience, which if there's a good number of them, it typically means that something needs to be done, and then you have to figure out what needs to be done. And what we have at our disposal as traffic engineers, and it's also available to all the municipalities, And it's primarily fed by the information from the municipal police departments. And in the case of state roads, also the state police. We have the what is called the Yukon Traffic Crash Depository. And what they are is they're the keeper of the traffic crash records. And they go back as far as, well, now it's 6 years. They go as far back as 6 years. And prior to that, it was the DOT, Connecticut DOT, that was keeping the accident records. But the most current grouping of traffic crashes is the last 6 years that is being accommodated specifically by Yukon. And what we found is that the entire North Bridebrook Road in a 5-year period only experienced 8 traffic crashes from Route 156 all the way to Route 1. None of them were in the vicinity of the site drive. And just about all of them, except one of them, were basically one-car accidents, somebody driving off the road. So that makes you suspect that maybe inclement weather, or maybe even some impairment of ability was involved with them. But with respect to the intersection itself, in that 5-year period, there was only one accident. And that one accident involved a westbound vehicle on Route 156 and a southbound vehicle coming out of North Bridebrook Road. And it was what we call a right angle accident. It was a traffic crash. It didn't involve any injury, and thank God, no death or anything like that. This is a pretty good traffic crash experience. In fact, we traffic engineers consider it to be excellent. And we don't think with especially the experience that we've indicated to you at the intersection in question, that there's anything that's going on at that intersection that needs any attention. And it doesn't sound like there's any high volumes going through that intersection, which is what I saw when I looked at the site. I looked at it 3 years ago. I looked at it again 2 years ago when we did an update, and I looked at it a year ago when we did another update. Now, you might ask yourself, why did we go out there and measure the traffic now? And the reason being is because with this COVID pandemic, traffic volumes, as I'm sure you've experienced, are significantly lower everywhere, not only in your town, not only in Connecticut, but throughout the country. And we've even been instructed, we traffic consultants by the DOT, that not to even bother doing traffic counts at this time, because they're not going to be representative of what it is under normal conditions. So that's why I started the presentation by telling you that we looked to see if anything had been done prior to the pandemic at that intersection. And as I indicated to you, we find a data source of any kind that had any information. So that's my presentation. As I said, we really don't feel that this proposed development is going to have an adverse impact on that intersection or anywhere along North Bridebrook Road. And we certainly don't think that anything needs to be done in order to mitigate whatever traffic it will add. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Again, for the record, Mr. Chairman, Harry Heller. That concludes our presentation. This is an 830G application. So the permissible parameters for the commission to consider are whether or not there are any health, safety, or welfare risks inherent in the development and design of this project, which outweigh the need for affordable housing in the state of Connecticut. We would submit to the commission that this is a very well thought out and engineered proposal, that we have submitted into the record the information that the commission needs to make an informed decision on the application. And either myself or our consultants will be glad to address any questions that any commissioners may have.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
I have one for Jim, the traffic. Was it Jim Viveris?
Barbaris,
I'm sorry.
B-U-B-A-R-I-S.
Very good. So just, and maybe this is simple answer, but in terms of the low number of accidents, you mentioned just the one accident at that particular intersection there that we're talking about, where North Brydebrook meets 156. Maybe just expound on that a little bit. Why only, is it because the high visibility, low traffic volume? And I think you sort of alluded to some of those things, but what would you surmise would be the reason why it's such a safe intersection, it's such a safe T right there?
I would say it's because there isn't much traffic.
Okay.
And the traffic that is there with what is available to
Right.
move it, the lane arrangements, the way they're laid out, the visibility, their sight distances and everything else are all conducive to making it all work well. And
Right.
we'd be fortunate if we found other intersections like that,
Thank you.
in my opinion.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of clarification.
Who was that?
Mr. Chairman, Bill Mulholland, I have a point of clarification.
Mr.
Harry,
Mulholland.
I have a
Certainly.
question for you in your testimony earlier about the phasing. It was unclear to me, you're going to install all the drainage simultaneously during phase one, along with the binder course, is that correct?
Or when I say all of the drainage, I mean all of the infiltration system, stormwater treatment and detention, as well as the culverts to accommodate phase one. Obviously, the catch basins and culverts for phases 2 and 3 won't be installed until phases 2 and 3 are built.
And so you will not be building the road system in phase one? You'll,
Yeah, all of the road system in phase 1 will be built, yes.
all right, thank you for that.
And completed and finished paved, other than the emergency access drive, which will only have binder course.
Okay, thank you, that's what I was looking for. Appreciate that, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Other questions by commission members? Raise your hand, state your name, and Mr. Dwyer. I think you raised your hand, Mr. Dwyer, didn't you? Yes.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I have a comment on that road. It's a twisty, windy road. And all traffic, it goes very slowly on that road. That's why there's no accidents. There's no stretch where you can really speed on that road. I want to make that comment. Thank you.
I would agree with that.
Mr. Chairman, just one last thing, Bill Mulholland again, staff. We did meet with Mr. Heller and his group last week and had a staff meeting to go over some additional concerns with the staff. In my opinion, I spoke with the staff today. They're satisfied with the applicant's attention to those details, and they're comfortable where we're at this time. Certainly, if this is to move on and should it be an affirmative vote, there will always be some last-minute construction detail that we make modifications to, but those are really the minutia of these types of projects. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mulholland. Other commission members, any comments, thoughts? All right, seeing none, we'll move to comments from the public. And Jen, do we have anyone from the public that wishes to speak either in support or in opposition or
I
neutral?
do have a Don Danila that would like to speak.
You are unmuted.
Go ahead, Don.
Yes, thank you. My name is Don Danella. I reside at 24 Patagonia Drive, Lyme. I'm a member of the East Lyme Commission for the Conservation of Natural Resources, East Lyme representative to Nyack River Watershed Committee.
Yeah.
And I'm
Excuse me,
also-
Don?
Yes.
Don, are you more than one in the house with connected to this? Because you have a serious echo and I cannot understand you whatsoever.
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
I think I had to turn my volume down. I'm sorry, I apologize. I'll start over again. My name is Don Danella. I reside at 24 Patagonia Drive, East Lyme. I'm a member of the East Lyme Commission for the Conservation of Natural Resources. I'm an East Lyme representative to the Nyack River Watershed Committee. I'm also a member of the Fishery Advisory Council to the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. I would just like to note for the record that Bride Lake and Bride Brook support the largest run of anadromous alewife in southern New England. And in many years, the number of spawners entering the lake exceed 300,000 fish. I urge the developer, his engineering consultant, town commissions, and professional staff overseeing this development to ensure that stormwater that might enter the brook or the groundwater entering the brook be handled and treated such that any discharges to Bride Brook have no impact to its water quality. This will ensure that this important fish population remains viable into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate your input. Do we have any other public comment before we go to some letters I think we may have?
I have Mr. Russo wanted to make a comment.
You are unmuted.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Yes, can you hear me fine?
Yep.
I just had two questions. One is, this applicant is for a site plan and not a preliminary site plan, is that correct?
This is a zone change, I believe.
It's for a zone change and not a site plan?
Mr. Chairman, perhaps we should ask
Yeah.
Mr. Heller to respond.
Yes.
Mr. Heller, Attorney
Yes.
Heller, if you care to respond, that'd be great.
Yeah, again, for the record, Harry Heller. It is an application for a final site plan approval. Because it is an 830G application, the applicant is not complying with the requirements of the underlying zoning district. So inherent in that site plan application is a zone change to affordable housing under 830G.
Okay, thank you. So it's a final site plan. That's kind of what I thought. And then
Yeah.
my only other question is, were the staff comments read into the record on the first public hearing? Because it appeared they weren't read into the record on this public hearing. And I thought that it had been purported that this commission as standard procedure is to read all of the comments from staff into the record. So that's a procedural question for the chairman.
Right, okay, so that's, I mean, I'll take that as a comment. I understand it's a question. Now, I actually was not present at the last meeting, so,
Mr. Bill's got his hand up.
I'm sorry, who does, Bill?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, Mr. Mulholland, if you could just chime in, that'd be great.
It is not standard practice to read staff comments at all of our hearings. Generally, staff comments on site plan for staff purposes and in review with design and engineering are handled at the staff level administratively. They typically don't always make it to the commission. There are times when they do, given that we're meeting by Zoom and in the pandemic, we're operating in a little bit different where because of the governor's orders, some things are being more included. Typically, the minutia is left to the staff and the applicant's engineer to iron out. And typically, as the commission may recall, I typically will put a memo in informing them that we as staff have met and that we were satisfied with an application in terms of the technical aspects of a site plan. So today, given the Zoom and the governor's orders, again, we are operating a little bit differently. I don't recall whether the staff comments from the last meeting were read or not. I don't know if anybody else has a recall of that.
Mr. Mulholland, they were not. They were
Thank you.
presented as exhibits that were available for everyone's opportunity to read on the town's website.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Moving along, we have some letters, is that right, Jen?
No, I do think Barbara Johnston, Barbara, did you want to make a comment?
I'm sorry, we have another person who wants to comment?
She's on the phone, so
You are unmuted.
go ahead,
Yes,
Barbara.
I do, Jen.
Go ahead.
I'm Barbara Johnston, 35 Seacrest Avenue. I'm a little concerned about the traffic study and the presentation tonight. It didn't sound like they viewed Giant's Neck streetlight at all. It wasn't mentioned. It's, I don't know how many feet, maybe 200 feet, 300 feet away from the entrance on 156 to North Brook Road. And to say you're only doing a traffic study during the day, and I don't even know what dates the traffic study were done. Are they done in the summertime, or have they been done maybe at this time of the year anyway? And there is a real problem there with exit from Giant's Neck. It's exit 72 from the Interstate 95, excuse me. And there's other problems that he stated he couldn't find any records. Was it 6 years ago? And more than that, when we had to wait almost 3 years to put a traffic light in that vicinity. Maybe somebody can step up and give me the dates on that. But basically, I think a serious traffic study should be taken, and especially in the summertime. It really does not count as far as I'm concerned, and I was on planning and zoning in Rocky Hill for years. That this should at least have a study before it gets any type of approval.
Thank you
That's
for
it.
your input. Do we have any other speakers, Jen?
I do have one other by phone. I'm gonna unmute the 442-8349. Did you have a comment for this application?
No.
I just want to give him a minute because sometimes with the phone, there's a lag.
Okay.
No.
No?
No, I did also want to give Roseanne, I did just ask her to unmute herself. I didn't know if Roseanne had any comment. She's also here by phone, so again, it may take a moment.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess no,
Okay.
because I'm
All right.
not seeing anybody. I don't have any hands up. Nobody's sending me anything further in chat.
So I think, Mr. Secretary, Terry, do we have letters that need to be read into the record? Is that?
No.
We do not.
There were no letters.
There are no letters. Okay. That was just in case there were letters. Okay, very good. So there are no other speakers. Any further comment by the commission? Any
If
further
I may-
clarification? I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. If I don't want to interrupt, but I'd like to make a comment when you're done.
I was just going to ask for that. Any further clarification, or do you wish to respond to maybe some of the public sentiment that we just heard, Attorney Heller?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
For the record, Harry Heller again, representing the applicant. There was, in fact, a thorough traffic study performed by Mr. Barberis. The report is in the record. And in fact, that report was prepared when the original formulation of this project, before we even went into design, was for 250 anticipated units, which was a mix of both apartments and condominiums. As we proceeded further in the design of the project was scaled down. But that report is in the record, and it evaluated the traffic counts that would be generated and added to the background traffic in the system, and found no adverse impacts requiring mitigation measures with respect to a 250 unit project. So Now
Can
we're
you-
down to 80, and there was an update to that report prepared, I believe, in October of this year. That's also part of the record.
Can you share the date of the original report for those that are with us this evening that don't have that in front of them or maybe can't access that or have not accessed that? You just indicated that the updated subsequent addendum, if you will, happened in October, but when was the original?
Jim, can you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
December 22nd, 2018 was the original report.
All right. So pre-pandemic by a long shot, during
Right.
normal times, if you will. Okay.
Right, that's when we did the original report, and as Mr. Heller said, we did it for 250 units.
Okay.
And again, when we generated the traffic and added it to the system, we didn't find that it was having an adverse impact. And now we're down to a third of that.
Okay.
As far as
Yep, and just so you know, it is entered as Exhibit B on the website,
Excellent.
part of the record.
Excuse me, Jim, I think it was noted in the comments by the person on the phone that that is a signalized intersection at Giant's Neck and 156. And your study essentially was looking at the North Bridebrook intersection with 156. Is that correct?
Correct. We didn't go as far as what's being referred to.
But that is a signalized, it's your
Yes, that's a
testimony that's
signalized
signalized.
intersection.
Thank you.
Any further comments? by-
Unmuted.
I question
by
that.
the
Barbara.
commission?
Hold, Barbara is asking to speak again.
Barbara Johnston, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Barbara Johnston, 35 Seacrest Avenue. If this gets approved, is there any way to make it joined with the Giant's Neck street traffic light there, so that you didn't go one spot and then have a traffic backup, because the traffic is bad in the summertime, so they could be coordinated together?
Well, there's a lot of
Does that
private
make
property,
sense?
a lot of private property involved there. I'll let Mr. Mulholland, our staff person, maybe speak to that if he wishes to, if he wishes to.
Yeah, just a brief comment, and Jim, you might want to jump in on this too. It's a DOT-controlled road, it's a state road, so they're going to pay attention to the traffic counts, and they are in control of whether they would want to modify that intersection at some point. A permit's not required from them at this particular time. Jim, is there anything else you want to add?
Is what's being asked that they want a signal at North Bridebrook Road added so that it's interconnected to the other one that's already there? Is that what's being
It's
said?
my impression that the question seems to be, in my opinion, whether we could make it a four-way intersection, and that would involve a taking and some major restructuring of the road system in that area, which is certainly, in my opinion, not
Yeah.
being entertained at this time. The DOT might look at that in the future, but obviously there'd have to be a taking in order to accomplish that of private property. So I think that may not be something that's going to concur with this type of development at this time.
Okay, well,
No.
I'll agree with what you just said. I mean,
Right.
I don't know if it's under the purview of this development in order to do what's being asked to be done. That's something that needs to be brought up to the state.
Right. As Bill said, that falls under the purview of DOT, and certainly ideally, that'd be great, right? I think we could all agree that would be great ideally, but realistically, practically, that's not in the cards right now. Certainly not as part of what we're hearing tonight or as part of this application. But we appreciate your input, Barbara. Was it Barbara Johnston? Barbara Johnson? Much appreciated. If we don't have any further comment from the commission, do we have anyone that wishes to comment?
I got one.
George?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to why none of the neighbors have voiced any opinions whatsoever about this project. Are they required to get notification that this project is happening?
They are not. We have not received any, to my knowledge, any input here at the staff level or phone calls. I think Jen, who's our full-time admin, can also, I don't think she's received any from neighbors who have inquired.
They were notified.
Were they?
I believe Attorney Heller, there were certificates of mailing, correct?
No, there were not,
No, it's not
because they've
required.
been suspended as part of
That's
the
right.
governor's executive order.
Right.
But
Trying to find out a little bit.
advertisements were run in accordance with the state statutes,
Yes.
advertising the hearing, et cetera.
They would have got the same notice that everybody in the town got, right? All the townspeople. So they didn't get any special notice, I guess is really the answer to the question. There was no special notice to neighbors adjoining streets, but they were given notice.
Yeah,
Did you want
because
to?
the governor suspended it.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, again, Harry Heller, in a separate proceeding with respect to this property before your Municipal Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, in a
Right.
different formulation of this project, which was a larger project, there was a public hearing, and it was pre-COVID, so that there was actual notice given to all abutting property owners with respect to that application, and we only had 2 appear at the public hearing.
Okay. I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. Thank you. This is a small town. Word travels pretty fast, so I would think that there would be some public sentiment from those that live nearby if they had something to say. But that might be just my opinion. Others may feel differently. Yes.
The day paper had a story about the whole project. If you didn't read the paper, that's
Right.
that's bad.
Thank you, Mr. Dwyer. Other commission members who are seated tonight wish to speak or be heard? With that, I think I'll take a motion to close the public hearing if we're ready to do so.
So moved.
Do I have a
Second,
second? Do I have a second? All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Aye. They take a roll call. Terry,
Aye.
Denise, George,
Aye.
Mr. Dwyer,
aye.
and Kim.
Aye.
There we go.
You forgot
Very
the name.
good. Moving on to the
Mr.
regular
Chairman, you
meeting.
forgot Denise.
Did I forget Denise?
No, he didn't.
Oh,
He got the
got
name
it. Oh,
right
okay,
before
sorry.
me.
Let
I
me
just
know.
said-
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Moving on to the regular meeting
Do we want to bring Norm back?
segment. We do want to bring Norm back. And Norm will come back in George's place, right? Yes, correct. Mr. Dwyer?
One comment. I thought Mr. Haller's presentation was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dwyer. Is Norm back?
Yep, he's back.
All right, excellent, very good. Moving on to the regular meeting. Item number 1 is the application of Landmark Development Group LLC and Jarvis of Cheshire LLC, care of Timothy Hollister, Shipman and Goodwin LLP, for a text amendment revision of section 32 to replace preliminary site plan / final site plan with quote unquote master plan procedure as used in gateway development. At this point, I'd like to introduce Town Attorney Mark Zamarka for some brief comments prior to commission entering into any discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the commission knows, from time to time, our office is asked to address the commission prior to making a decision on a particular application so that we can review the standards and parameters by which you need to look at it. By way of a little bit of history with this, this current text amendment application stems from an affordable housing application that was originally filed by Landmark in 2005. That was the third one, the first 2 having been denied by the commission, and those denials were upheld on appeal to the Superior Court. The 2005 application sought to put 840 units on Landmark's property in the Oswegatchie Hills. The Zoning Commission in 2005 approved that application in part and denied it in part, after which Landmark took an appeal to the Superior Court. In October of 2011, Judge Frazzini issued a 104-page decision addressing all parameters of the application. I will not presume to go into everything in the 104-page decision, but for purposes of the current application, the case was remanded to the Zoning Commission with instructions to adopt an amendment to Section 32, the Affordable Housing Regulation, consistent with the judge's decision and incorporating the proposed text amendment that Landmark had originally applied for and was initially denied by the commission. In addition to having the commission adopt a new affordable housing regulation, Judge Frazzini also gave the commission the authority to require an applicant to provide at either the conceptual site plan, preliminary site plan, or final site plan stage adequate information to allow the commission to evaluate the development and ensure its harmony with the relevant environmental, health, and safety considerations. The commission could use its discretion and judgment as to what information was required and at what stage. In 2012, Landmark submitted an application for a text amendment consistent with that instruction. And in 2013, after much back and forth between Landmark and the commission, the parties ended up agreeing on the version of Section 32 that is now currently in place. That section, and again, that was based on the text amendment that Landmark had initially proposed back in 2005 with some tweaking that had gone on. That notes that an affordable housing application can be initiated in one of three ways: a conceptual site plan, a preliminary site plan, or a final site plan. That regulation also notes that a designation as an affordable housing district cannot be approved without an approved final site plan. What this means is a zone change to an AHD, affordable housing district, cannot be approved without having a fully approved final site plan. The current regulation also notes that there are 15 separate pieces of information required with a preliminary site plan, including information regarding how sewage disposal and water supply will be provided for, and a statement regarding the impact of the development on health and safety, including any emergency services. This particular portion is consistent with Judge Frazzini's ruling about the adequate information to evaluate environmental health and safety issues. The final site plan in the current regulation requires that all of the information for a preliminary site plan plus all the information for a site plan under Section 24 be supplied, plus how sewer and water will be supplied. In 2015, as many members of the current commission know, Landmark applied for approval of a preliminary site plan and a zone change under that version, or the current version of Section 32. Now, contrary to some things that were brought up during the public hearing, that application was not denied. The preliminary site plan was approved with conditions, and the zone change was approved for the area limited to the portion of the property that was within the East Lyme Sewer Service District. In terms of the preliminary site plan, it was approved with conditions that Landmark provide at or before the final site plan stage a wetlands permit, coastal site plan review, how water and sewer would be provided, information regarding road width and emergency access, and what I've referred to as the relevant information to allow the commission to assess environmental and coastal impacts. Landmark appealed the decision. That decision is still pending in the Hartford Superior Court. It was put on hold by agreement of the parties pending this current text amendment application. Now, we heard through the public hearing several times from Mr. Russo and Attorney Hollister that they feel that the commission had either misstated or distorted or misapplied the regulation in reaching its 2015 decision. That is Landmark's characterization. Our office completely disagrees with that characterization. First, as noted, the preliminary site plan was approved. That is still on appeal and has not yet been overturned or otherwise dealt with by the court. It's important to remember that Landmark proposed and agreed to the version of Section 32 that it applied under. It applied under that section, and the PSP, the preliminary site plan, was approved. It is our office's position that the existing version of Section 32 was properly applied. Now, the proposed text amendment that was put in by Mr. Russo and Attorney Hollister, as noted, deals with the totality of Section 32. I am just going to address a couple of issues or a couple of things that our office noted regarding Section 32.9. First, Section 32.9 eliminates language that a zone change to an affordable housing district cannot be approved without an approved final site plan. Again, our position at the time when this version of Section 32 was enacted, and our position still is that that clause makes sense because that way land is not saddled as being designated as an affordable housing district in an instance where an applicant could not get a final site plan approved. We think that it is just proper to have that in there. The proposal also adds a master development plan, really substitutes the term master development plan for a preliminary site plan as one of three ways to initiate an affordable housing application. Judge Frazzini's decision did not address a master development plan in any way, nor was there anything regarding this in the 2012 Landmark text amendment that turned into the current version that we have. Both Mr. Russo and Attorney Hollister stated that the amendment was based on the SUE, or the special use elderly regulations. It's important to note that there is nothing in the SUE regulations regarding an MDP. That is found in Section 11A for the Gateway Planned Development District. A review of that particular section notes that the purpose of a master development plan is to facilitate the comprehensive development of multiple parcels in a mixed-use development. The proposed text amendment also eliminates the requirement for the relevant information, the sort of the catch-all phrase that I've been using. It eliminates the requirement for a statement regarding the impact of the development on public health and safety. This is counter to the instructions in Judge Frazzini's decision, which allowed the commission to decide what information it would require and at what stage. Judge Frazzini's decision also tied a decision on a zone change to the receipt and review of this relevant information. And again, the proposed amendment eliminates this requirement. It's not addressed anywhere in the proposed regulation. And the public health and safety information is also not required in Section 24 for a site plan application. So again, the foregoing in terms of the history and the background and what issues our office saw in terms of the current application is just by way of background. Now, as Mr. Russo and Attorney Hollister noted during the public hearing, this is not an affordable housing application, and it is not evaluated under 8-30G. 8-30G is a more stringent standard. It requires substantial evidence for the review of an administrative decision. That does not apply here because when a zoning commission decides on a proposed change to the regulation, you are acting in a legislative capacity, not an administrative capacity. As such, you have very broad discretion in making a decision to delete a presumptively valid regulation. A court on appeal does not substitute its judgment for that of the commission. That only happens if the appellants prove that the commission's action was clearly arbitrary or illegal. However, on appeal, the conclusions reached by the commission are upheld if they are reasonably supported by the record. The question is not whether the trial court would have reached the same conclusion, but whether the record before the agency reasonably supports the decision that you make. That said, the last little bit is what you should take to heart in terms of the parameters and standards when ruling on this. Again, what you're looking for is you need to reasonably exercise your discretion, and whatever decision you make needs to be reasonably supported by the record.
Thank you, Attorney Zamarka. And moving right along, comments from the commission.
I have a couple.
Mr. Peck.
Attorney Zamarka answered one, I believe. And one question was, if we approve the master plan, that sounds like it's binding and we're kind of stuck. Am I reading that correct? Attorney
Zamarka?
I'm not exactly sure what it is you're asking, Mr. Peck.
They're proposing presenting a master plan and then going to a final approval. I interpret what you said. One of the things you said is that we are not required to have a final approval under the new proposed regulation.
No. A final site plan is still required. A final site plan is still required. A final site plan has to have all of the information that's required under the preliminary site plan, or under the proposed, the master development plan stage, plus all of the information that would be required for a site plan under section 24.
Right. You said something about a final site plan is not required under this proposed regulation.
No, if I did, I misspoke, but I do not believe that's the case.
Did anybody else hear that?
I don't remember hearing that. He was talking about the couple of issues, and one being that the master development plan language was added as part of this text amendment proposal in replacement of the preliminary site plan. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Yes. Okay. Yes. Mr. Peck, is it possible you were thinking about a zone change?
Well, I just wrote down what I thought you said. The proposal eliminates the need for a final site plan approval. So my note is that, the preliminary.
Oh, I think that was in the context of a zone change, because the existing regulation states that a zone change to an affordable housing district cannot be approved without an approved final site plan.
All right. So
that's what the current regulation reads. The proposal eliminates that language. So okay. Perhaps that's what you were thinking.
All right. That's for zone change then.
Correct.
All right. So I guess then my question is, we have a two-step program here proposed. If we approve the master plan, are we held to the fire more under this proposal than we would be if we left our regs alone?
Well, it still requires that they provide all of the information required for the preliminary / master stage and the final site plan, plus the plus the regular site plan requirements. I would note, however, that again, the language regarding the zone change is not there. And also the statement regarding impacts on public health, safety has been deleted as well.
That was going to be my question. What happened under 32.9.2 to O, which was all about public health and safety? Why do they want that eliminated?
Well, unfortunately, I would not presume to answer that. And since the public hearing's closed, I don't know.
Okay.
I do believe at some point, and as I was looking through my notes, I saw somewhere that someone for the applicant, perhaps it was Mr. Russo, perhaps it was Attorney Hollister, stated that all of this information was required for a site plan anyway. I did look through section 24 and I found nothing in section 24 that required a statement regarding impacts on public health and safety.
Okay, good. That was my question, really.
If I'm wrong on that, Mr. Holland, please let me know. But I didn't see anything in section 24 to that effect.
I did have a couple other items.
All right, there we go.
So we adopt the master plan idea. Okay, we approve the master plan for a certain parcel or parcels. That essentially is rezoning, correct? We have,
Yes.
just like we did at Gateway, we have rezoned the area. In my opinion, once you rezone an area, you're kind of on the hook to.
Well, we have
believe this is an appropriate place for a project.
Well, so a couple of things now. We have to remember that an affordable housing development does not have to comply with underlying zoning. So that's one thing we do need to keep in mind.
Rezone.
Well, and second, an application for an affordable housing development, for example, the one that we just closed the public hearing on, that was not done pursuant to our existing regulation, which the applicant has every right to do. We have traditionally treated those as applications for site plan, preliminary, final, whatever it may be, as well as an application for a zone change. So we have traditionally dealt with them separately as far as that goes. This does not specifically call this proposed amendment does not specifically call for a zone change, but it does eliminate the requirement of an approved final site plan in order to have an affordable housing zone.
All right. One other item. That's the change in 32.4.2. We now have, in regards to building height, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong. We currently have a 30-foot high limit.
That's correct.
Excuse me, 35-foot high.
That's what's proposed.
They are proposing a different method of measuring height, if you notice, which is going to give them higher buildings.
Right.
If we measure from the average pitch of the roof, if it's a pitched roof, they're proposing measuring from the soffit. So they're going up.
Yes.
Just wanted to make that note.
Thank you, Mr. Peck. Other commission members wish to speak? Mr. Donovan? Oh, I think you're muted, Terry. Can't hear him. Anybody else hear him?
No,
Okay.
you're doing that thing again, Terry. Now you're muted. Now you're unmuted. Nope.
No change.
Anyone else in the meantime while Terry's dealing with his technical difficulties?
I do
No?
want you to know, Matt, that did not happen last week at all while he
It
was.
didn't happen at all?
No.
Nope, or the previous week.
Mr. Dwyer?
My height has always been from the ground up, not from the floor levels or anything. And that's, we go from ground up and we do have a maximum. That's the point I'm trying to make.
You're talking about building height?
Yes.
Mr. Mulholland's looking.
If necessary, Mr. Chairman, does anyone want me to quote that out of the code book?
Please do.
The definition of building height in section 1.12 of the East Lyme zoning regulations reads as follows. Building height, the vertical distance from the average finished grade within 10 feet of the walls of the building to the highest point of a flat or mansard roofs, including the top of a parapet, or to the mean level between the eaves and ridge for gambrel, hip, or gable roofs. So that's your definition in your current code. And height is typically 30 feet in RU 40, and most of the other zones, R12, R10. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulholland.
Testing, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Attorney, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Zamarka. How would this decision affect the decision that we previously made in 2015 that is still in the courts? Would it have any effect on it whatsoever?
Well, that's a good question. Generally, these things do not apply retroactively. My guess is, and I don't know, that would be up to the applicant as to how they wanted to approach it. Whether if this was approved, if they would reapply under this application. But it would not apply retroactively.
Thank you.
We have to remember too, this is a text amendment. And that could or would apply to other projects, public, private, in town. And any text amendment that we adopt should be for the greater good of the town. It should be for the greater good of the public and in the best interest of the citizens of this town and future projects. So, and as Attorney Zamarka mentioned, we do have broad discretion when it comes to text amendments. That's one of the two things that we're tasked with on the zoning commission. One is to enforce the regs that we have already, and the second is to adopt new regulations or text amendments or entertain new regulations or text amendments as presented by applicants, and that's what we have here. I mean, just one thing I wanted to note, one thing I'm uncomfortable with is the feeling that we're not able or would not be able to properly assess the project's impact to the environmental and coastal resources with this text amendment change. That we lose some of that discretion that we have. But that's just that's my quick sentiment on that. I don't want to speak about the property. We know it's a delicate property, but we're talking about a text amendment.
Correct.
But impact, how does this impact what we do? If anyone else, does anyone else care to comment? At this point, I would direct our staff, because obviously of the history here, it would stand to reason. We have Attorney Zamarka here tonight. He's provided us with some history and some insight in regards to this text amendment, that he and that town attorney staff produce resolutions in the affirmative and the negative for the next zoning meeting, which is scheduled for December 3rd, which will give us some additional time to peruse all of the information that's in front of us and to make some good judgments. Again, we have a lot of discretion. We're operating in our legislative capacity when we have a text amendment before us, and it's not something that we should take lightly. At the same time, we should be as informed as we can be and be very pointed in our comments at that next meeting on December 3rd. That would be my feeling. Attorney Zamarka, is that something you'd be able to do?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'd like to hear Mr. Mulholland's take on this.
But rather than really offer testimony, I think as Matt's pointed out, you're acting in your legislative capacity, you have broad discretion to make a decision. You need to evaluate the submission package for the language that's in it. Is this in the best interest of Section 32 and the zoning regulations in the town's best interest? Are you losing any ability to review by making this, by agreeing to this proposal? There is some points made by the chairman and others that this eliminates some controls and your ability to evaluate. I think that question is whether the commission thinks that information is pertinent to its decision-making capacity on all of these types of applications. As we know from experience, anytime we don't require something in our regulations, there's always an applicant, in my opinion, that's not going to give us that information because it's not necessary. Even if staff asks for it, often they'll tell us that they don't need to provide it, they're not going to. When staff looks at these applications, we apply the regulations, but often we're looking at if something's going to be built, we're looking for a lot of minutia in terms of the proposal. And so I think, again, you need to evaluate whether the elimination of some of this language and the addition is in the best interest. You're losing the ability to ask for some of this information based on Section 32. So the board has to evaluate that. I think, if we're going to the 12-3 meeting, which is appears we are, and staff will do some resolutions and then the affirmative and negative, and the commission will then have an opportunity. You'll have some time to evaluate and consider the language between now and December 3rd, and then you'll have some suggested motions, which you certainly can look at and modify at that time if you choose to.
Thank you, Mr. Mulholland. So at this point, is there sentiment among all of us that we're going to continue this until December 3rd? Does that seem to make sense at this point? We're still within the timeline, my feeling is why not take the additional time to make sure that we make the best possible judgment, the most informed judgment and decision about this text amendment. And with all the testimony we've had quite a bit of testimony.
I concur.
Very good. All right, so we'll continue that until December 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Moving on to item number 2, which is the petition of Paz and Construction LLC to rezone 20.24 acres from RU80, RU40, its existing zoning designation, to affordable housing district, and for approval of a preliminary site plan which proposes an 80-unit multifamily affordable residential housing development designated as quote unquote Brookside Apartments for property identified on the westerly side of North Rybrook Road in East Lyme Assessors Map 09.0, Lot 37-2, pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 8-30G. At this point, I will once again introduce our town attorney, Mark Zamarka, And he's going to take a few minutes just to brief us
I'm just
really
gonna
on
note-
our role and our responsibilities when deciding on affordable housing applications prior to us getting into any real discussion.
I'm going to note for the record that Norm has recused himself again and George is seated.
Okay. Thank you, Jen. Appreciate that. George, appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is the other side of the coin. In the prior matter, when I said that it was not an affordable housing application, it's not judged under the stringent standards. This is one that is. Now, these are processed in the same way as any other site plan application. As we know, this is done under Section 32, the Affordable Housing Regulation. And such an application can either be approved with conditions, or denied. If it's approved, it's filed just like any other zoning or subdivision application with deed restrictions and anything else that goes along with an affordable housing application. If it's denied, or if there are sufficient restrictions imposed, the applicant has a choice. They can either appeal under the statute 8-30G or resubmit an amended application. If they decide to do either of those, they must be done within 15 days of the agency's decision. Now, when you make your decision on an affordable housing application, you are required to state the reasons on the record, and that statement must take the form of an official, formal collective statement of the reason for your actions. This is why we do very detailed resolutions in these matters. And these reasons have to be in there at the time you make your decision. It's not like another a non-affordable housing site plan application where if the commission decides they're not going to list any reasons, the court will just go through the record on appeal and see if there's anything to support the decision. That's not the way it works in an affordable housing decision. You have to make a formal statement of the reasons you either approve with conditions, or deny an application. Now, you can't deny an affordable housing application unless there is some quantifiable probability of harm from a defect or problem with the application. It has to be quantifiable. It's not just the mere possibility of harm to the public interest, and that reasonable changes cannot be made in the application to address the problem. On appeal, assuming the application is either approved with conditions or denied, things are turned a little upside down. In normal land use appeal, the appellant has to prove that the commission did something wrong. In an affordable housing land use appeal, the commission has the burden to prove it did everything right. And they have to, on an appeal, you have to establish first that the reason for your decision are supported by sufficient evidence in the record. And if the court finds that the reasons for your decision are supported by sufficient evidence, then the court conducts an independent review of the entire record to determine three things. First, if your decision was necessary to protect substantial public interests in health, safety, or other matters, whether the risk of harm to those public interests outweighs the need for affordable housing, and three, whether that public interest could be protected by reasonable changes to the development. So to try to put it in a little more plain English, you can't deny an affordable housing application unless there's a quantifiable probability of harm, and that harm is to the public interest, and that reasonable changes cannot be made to address that problem. Also on appeal, the statute gives the courts much more latitude with an affordable housing application than they do with regular land use applications. A court can partly revise, modify, remand, reverse the decision. The courts have a whole lot more discretion and a whole lot more authority when deciding on an affordable housing application. Just by way of example, I would refer to the Judge Frazzini decision I spoke of earlier tonight. He issued a 104-page decision addressing in great detail every aspect of the 2005 application. And again, this analysis applies to any decision you make, whether it be an approval with conditions, or a denial. You just have to make sure that you specifically state your reasons for your decision on the record, and that whatever decision you make is supported by sufficient evidence in the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Zamarka. With that, we'll go to comments from commission members. Anyone care to comment?
Mr. Chairman, Terry, I see there's been quite a bit of concern with the traffic there. And, you know, being down in that area myself, it's really only during the summertime. But if you go downtown Niantic during the summer, you're going to have the same issues anywhere. So, you know, as to their point prior to, that's more of a state issue than it is our issue. I know a member from the public mentioned off of 72 during the summertime. And, you know, Rocky Neck is right there, and it does create a lot of traffic that gets backed up and going out. And, you know, we did finally get a light down here at Giant's Neck, you know, but, you know, being, you know, maybe 100 feet away, you know, I don't see it being a major issue myself, but that's just my opinion. So.
Appreciate it, Mr. Donovan. Anyone else on the commission care to speak? Mr. Dwyer.
I don't think that area right there is a zoning problem. That's a state problem. And overall, to me, it doesn't present a problem. But as I say, that's a state problem. Thank you.
It's hard to find in looking at this application any, as Attorney Zamarka said, quantifiable harm to the public interest. And that's, when you don't have that, then and certainly a thorough application. I reviewed a lot of the records over the past couple of days, and certainly it sounds like many of the some of the more ancillary issues have been addressed at the staff level. There's been a lot of cooperation in terms of the coordination of this project and in terms of expectations by the town. And, you know, traffic wise, that's such a rural area, and it's going to be a small addition of cars based on the presentation by Jim and this evening on behalf of the applicant and on behalf of Attorney Heller. I'm gonna blow his last name again. Is it begin with a B? Is it Berberis or Berberis? I'm sorry, but much appreciate his testimony. His testimony.
Thank you.
In terms of the traffic, gave me confidence that that's not going to be a problem area. The visibility is good there. Very, very small addition of cars potentially. The only issue I see, and it's maybe more of a curiosity question for the applicant, for the attorney, is if it's going to be affordable housing, and you know, again, you don't have any public transit going through there on North Brybrook, and I wondered if the developer was going to reach out to Southeastern Area Transit and see if there could be some sort of bus transit there to potentially help some of those folks who may need transportation. I don't know. That was just a thought that I had, since it's sort of off the beaten path, but that might be more of a, you know, a housekeeping issue, and not one that's really within our purview or of our concern necessarily as a zoning commission. But that's all I have. Anyone else on the commission care to speak? George?
I take it, and I would be inclined to lean towards approving. Do we want to put any conditions that someone hasn't thought of on it?
Yeah, I think what we have to do, again, because this isn't affordable housing and because there's so much involved here, that even though it may or may not, it sounds like we may, I don't know, collectively be leaning towards perhaps an approval. I don't know. I don't want to be premature, but I think that again, we should direct staff to produce resolutions in the affirmative and in the negative, given the,
Do we
the
have
size
to
and
make a
si-
decision tonight, or can we wait till next meeting as
I
well?
think we're going to have to wait until December 3rd on this one as well. At least that would be my recommendation to the commission, to allow time for our town attorney to produce those resolutions, which will, which will assist us greatly in deliberating most effectively.
Right, and Mr. McPherson, the public hearing just closed tonight, so you have 65 days from
Good,
to
good.
render a decision. So there's no ticking clock.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Mr. Mulholland, sure.
I would recommend, based on what I'm hearing tonight, that we continue this to the 12/3 meeting, and that staff prepare resolutions in the affirmative and the negative, and the commission can then make a choice. And it'll give the commission time to evaluate further the testimony that they've heard this evening and at the prior meeting.
Well said. I agree. I concur 100%. And I think that's what we'll do. Is everybody on board with doing that? Continuing this
I
to
am.
December 3rd?
I concur.
Does that give Attorney Zamarka enough time? Attorney Zamarka, we've got a lot of stuff going on. We're keeping you busy.
Well, it beats the alternative.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Moving on to item number 3, the approval of minutes of November 5th, 2020. I
We
was
want to
not
switch back?
Yes,
present.
Norm
We're going to
for-
switch back with Norm. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, you want me off the clock at this point?
I think Mr. Nickerson would appreciate that. Thank you.
I think you would too. Thank you, folks.
I'll send him a text right now. What time?
No. I've still got a bill for it. Come on.
I'm kidding.
Uh-huh.
9:07, you bill till 10 o'clock, right?
Thank you, folks.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mark.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Moving on to the approval of minutes of November 5th, 2020.
So moved to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Kim, all those in favor signify by raising your hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, I wasn't there. Not me. I've got to abstain.
Yeah.
501.
You got a roll call, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, we got to do the roll call. Thank you for that correction. Let's go through it. We've got Mr. Donovan.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Dwyer
Aye.
is aye. Kim K, we've got
Aye.
aye. And Denise Marcus?
Aye.
Aye. And it should be Norm now, right? Norm's back in. Norm Peck,
I'm not here.
you're not here. George is here. 501. Very good. Moving on to old business. We have none. New business. We've got a 2021 meeting schedule that we need to adopt because it needs to be posted on the website. Per what? State statute, right, Bill? Bill's still here? We lose Bill?
He's there. He's muted.
Okay,
Please.
that's all right.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes, and we have to send it up to the state as well, so we need some time. So if we can get that
Okay.
done tonight, it'd be helpful.
Okay.
It's
Very
essentially
good.
the same schedule.
Yeah,
Couple of
it's-
dates moved around the holidays, that's all.
Right. Very good. So we'll take a vote on that schedule. Has everybody had a
Mr.
chance to look at it? Are there any, I know what was it last year or the year before, there was a meeting scheduled on St. Patrick's Day. I think we had to make a modification there, but
That is correct.
The trick of
Right,
the
remember that?
Irish.
I wonder who noticed that.
yeah,
Well,
you went into an uproar.
I would make a motion to approve these dates for our meetings.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Kim, all those in favor? I got to go around again. Aye. Bill
Aye.
Dwyer, aye. Kim, aye.
Aye.
Terry, aye. Denise, aye. And Norm, aye.
Yep.
Very good.
Thank you.
So we have our meeting schedule. Any business on the floor? If any by the majority vote of the commission, does anybody have anything tonight?
Yes, I do.
Norm?
I
Go ahead.
brought this up last meeting, and I'm pretty burned up about the Stop and Shop thing with the trees being cut when they were told 2 years ago and they agreed to not touch them. Bill, what's the latest?
Thank you, Norm. I sent them a cease and desist order, a pretty terse order to stop, that the trees need to be left alone. We could order them replaced at 30 feet. Obviously, we'd probably end up in court. I did get a call back from the owner of the development, who is still the same owner who originally developed the site. And he discussed that he thought we had an agreement where they could trim them, etc. And then my comment was that trimming is one thing, cutting them in half is another. I think the next step would be to ask town council to send them a letter and telling them that the next step after that would be a legal proceeding. Now, I will note that the courts are closed primarily for zoning cases, so when the courts do open, I'm told that we'll be about 6-8 months behind, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't still be moving forward. It's helpful to have the commission understand that this is an enforcement action, and if they want us to move forward, and I, for one, am a big supporter of tree plantings, et cetera. On a sidebar, you may know that I've required Latimer Brook Commons to replant all the trees they cut down on Boston Post Road, as well as Walgreens had 4, I think, diseased trees. I ordered those replaced at 30 feet. We settled on 20-ish. They've been replaced. The trees are a great tool in landscaping to enhance properties and character of the community and the human experience in the community. I'm a big fan of that. It's helpful to have the commission asking that we, particularly on this job, also go forward. I will also note that they are painting the building, which we don't have any jurisdiction over because in the CA zone, we don't have any design teeth. They're also rebadging it with new signage. I met with the sign people from Milford yesterday and awaiting an updated package, and that'll probably be approved. It's essentially a replacement. But my next step on this is to go to town attorney, and I can talk to Zumacher probably tomorrow morning, because we're going to touch base on tonight's proceedings anyway. So that is my update.
Thanks, Bill.
You're
This is
welcome.
the second or third time we've had, it's definitely the second time. Is it the third or the second time?
It may well be the third. I'm going to have
think
to
it
pull
is.
the file and go through the enforcement section of the file. Karen Z helps me with that piece and,
Right.
and helps me chase the enforcement side of the job.
Right.
And so I'm going to get with her and pull the file, go back through it all, and then I'll turn all that over to Mr. Zumacher and ask him to send them a letter saying, listen, we're serious.
Yeah. Has the ownership changed, or we're dealing with the same people who are making the same mistakes?
Same individual
Okay. Just curious.
has a different view of the world.
I don't like to make a mountain out of a molehill,
No.
but that owner is making a mountain out of a molehill. All they had to do was comply.
Mm-hmm.
Now we got to build a mountain. And if we don't, we mean nothing. Okay. We might as well not even exist.
Well, Mr. Chairman, in conclusion, I will talk to Mr. Zamak in the morning and move this forward. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Mulholland.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
While we're speaking of signs and trees,
Yes.
Mr. Mulholland, I have brought this to your attention before. Gateway Common with their townhouses. Is that considered a sign, the big banner they have up on their fence there?
Their attorney has made several pitches that it's a legal sign. Because if you read the Gateway Development regulations on the signage, there is some interesting language, and he may have a point. I have asked them to clarify. Obviously, they like having the sign up. I'd be happy to address that once again. I actually talked to their attorney this morning.
So let me ask you this. When it did recently change, is there supposed to be a buffer between them and the highway to where the trees are that keep getting trimmed as well?
They have a buffer they put in. It's an evergreen buffer. They planted along the buffer along I-95, which is pretty minimal, but they did plant several evergreen trees that they have to maintain. They've been relatively responsible. I haven't looked at those recently because much of our attention is on the new section where the 120 units are being built and.
Which the sign is advertising.
Yes,
Just
it is.
listen,
Yes,
just saying,
absolutely. Absolutely.
you got to be fair. You got to be fair to them all. Am I
Absolutely,
correct?
that's correct, and I think we're gonna find that
All right.
he may have an argument that that sign may be legit, but that has not yet to be determined.
Then why can't other businesses have signs on their buildings
Well, they can.
or on their fences?
As long as they meet the sign regulations, they can. Certainly they can.
Just saying.
That sign would qualify as a freestanding sign. The question is, does their language allow it? And the language is somewhat ambiguous in the gateway code on signage. And for those of you who haven't looked at it in a long time, you may want to read through it as a refresher. And speaking of gateway, I don't think we're going to see any more commercial efforts by them until the I-95 bridge is replaced and the exits and entrance are redone. I don't think the state will give them any more permitting, so that may sit for a while until that is done.
So we'll never get that bridge.
That's in the
We'll
third
still
phase.
have that gravel
Well, I
emergency.
think you will. I sincerely think you'll probably get that bridge. It'll be phase 3, but we're kind of waiting on the governor.
Yeah, well, I'm 53. We'll see how long it takes.
Well, they started Route 11 extension when I was 16, and I'm not 16 anymore. So there you go. Oh.
All right, moving right along, and we're right back to you, Mr. Mulholland, zoning official.
I'll just be.
That we should be aware of.
Thank you. I'll be brief. We're real busy. The phone's ringing off the hook. I've got all kinds of people coming through the door. I think next spring, I think we'll see some improvements in Niantic Village. I think it'll come back very strongly if the vaccines prove out. And I have one new restaurant, a Mexican restaurant, that's actually in remodeling as we speak, and that will open in late March, is what it's being projected at this time. I'm hopeful it'll be something that becomes an asset to the community. We shall see. There are some other interests. I will note that the Morton House has gutted their restaurant space. There's no longer a kitchen. They got into some issues with the building official and then with the zoning guy. And the owner has approached me. He wants to put in more apartments on the first floor. Well, being a legal pre-existing non-conforming rooming house, that's not something he can do without the Zoning Board of Appeals. He is going to probably try to make that effort, so we'll see where that goes. So in essence, it looks like we've lost the restaurant use in that structure at this time.
Okay.
So we'll see how that goes, but we're busy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill, on the Morton House,
Yes.
how about if you suggest to him that he turns it into a hotel?
I have
It's a permitted
suggested,
use.
yes, I have suggested a lot of things. He seems to have a view of his own, which is certainly his right. He's adamant against another restaurant. Could he turn it into a hotel? Absolutely, it's a permitted use. He would need site plan approval, and we would need to get some other approvals, and we'd have to work through that, but that's a possibility.
Very good. Comments from ex officio. Is Roseanne still with us or no?
He is.
I am still here and I'm wide awake.
I love it. I love it. Good evening, Roseanne. Good evening.
Good evening. I have endured. So I would just like to make a couple of comments in regards to the recent discussion, in particular to the repeated cutting of those trees, which have left them in hideous condition. Mr. Mulholland referred to it as an unfortunate accident, but it's not an accident. It's intentional. And it's in direct violation. I think there should be some kind of compromise, either requiring them to replace some of the trees that are most visible and replace them with what's supposed to be the 30-foot height, or as the compromise already was, the 20-foot height. this isn't the first time that corporation has not come forward as they should have. If every day as we drive along that road and look at the side of the road that faces that particular business, you recall that they were supposed to do plantings on the other side of the road, and instead they put in giant trap rocks, which you see on the side of highways. They were supposed to replace those and put plantings in, and they never did, and they got away with that too. I think it's about time we held them to what is supposed to be our standards. They certainly are a profitable business in town, and many people shop there. I think they can afford to use some of their profits and do the right thing. Sorry, that's my first rant, but I'm every time you drive by on 95 and you see that, and to do it the second time, it's definitely willful. It's no accident. In regards to the affordable housing, and there was some talk about the affordable housing, there was some talk about the height and the height restrictions up on the Big Hill. But it's about 3 years, maybe 4 years ago, we came up with a document on what would be the criteria for appropriate, or what would be the areas in town that would be appropriate for affordable housing. And it seems to me that we've kind of ignored some of those things that were in that description, including, as was brought up tonight, adequate public transportation. And many of these applications that we're seeing now certainly don't meet that qualification or that desired stipulation that was put in the original document. I don't know where that document is housed. So perhaps that might be something that the commission might like to look at, whether there's any legal standing for that, I don't know. But I know that we had some kind of an agreement with the state when we prepared that document, that those were stipulations that we could uphold. So I'll see if I can find something, if I can scratch my head here. And I think it was maybe about 5 years ago. And that was done through the Board of Selectmen, but I don't know if it was ever communicated to zoning. So I'll look into that before the next meeting. So the board has been busy with, again, working on the emergency management building, getting that in, getting the subcontractors all lined up. The subcommittee that's working on that has been very busy, and they should be presenting a final plan within the next couple of weeks, informing the board of deadlines and when certain things are going to happen. We've also been busy with trying to figure out how we're going to meet the requirements in the new police accountability bill that was passed by the state. Just the body cams alone are going to be thousands of dollars. Whether the state's going to pitch in and help us with some funds, we don't know yet, but we're ready to apply for some state grants, and hopefully we're getting out of the starting gate fast, so that we may be able to get some of that money. So basically that's all that I have this evening, and happy Thanksgiving to all. I hope that you're able to enjoy some time with your families, and thanks for serving the town.
Thank you, Roseanne. Happy Thanksgiving to you, and thank you for your very thorough report and comments. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Mr. Peck?
Just as a comment to Roseanne's affordable housing issue there, that was a committee, it was a zoning effort. It was a subcommittee chaired by Mark Salerno.
Mm-hmm.
And we were sold a bill of goods by the representative from the state of Connecticut who dealt in affordable housing. Jane, I forgot her name.
Was it Jane Cable? No, it was no. But now I'm remembering that now.
We were told to set up these certain sites, and then submit them to the state. And then if we had a development, we get paid $2,000 a unit or something like that from the state of Connecticut. And of course, they ran out of money, and so we kind of forgot about the thing.
That would have been the incentive housing, and we did adopt some incentive housing zones in town, and
That's
they are
right.
in existence, and Norm is absolutely right. I think they owed us $220,000 and actually sent us $20,000 for our efforts. Ran out of money, you're correct.
Okay,
All right. Thanks again, Roseanne. Happy Thanksgiving.
thanks.
Moving on to comments from the zoning board, liaison to planning. Ann Thurlow is not here tonight. She would have attended on November 10th if there was a meeting on November 10th, and it looks like I'm scheduled for the December 1st meeting. which is coming up.
There was a meeting on the 10th, Matt.
There was?
Yeah, the most important thing that happened at that meeting for planning was they approved the POCD. They adopted the POCD.
Okay, all right, very good, very good. Very good. Comments from chairman. I would just like to echo Roseanne's sentiments, wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And we have one meeting we just have the one meeting in December, right? Been
That's
doing this
correct.
been doing this 11 years. I ought to know that by now. One meeting in December, and then before you know it, we'll be into the new year. So everybody enjoy.
I think the first meeting in January is the second, if I'm not mistaken, or third.
Is it? Okay, all right.
The first meeting in January is January 7th.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But appreciate everybody's efforts. I know I missed the last two meetings. I'm going to do my best to get fully up to speed with these decisions we have coming up on these two applications that were before us tonight. So I would just urge everybody to do the same and, be vocal in your comments for or against, and that'll be very helpful, particularly in the affordable housing, with regard to the affordable housing project. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting.
So moved.
So moved.
Terrence Fig.
All those in favor, aye. Good night, everybody. Great job.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulholland. Thank you, Attorney Zamarka, although I think he left. Brooke, thank you very much. Jen, everybody, excellent job. Thanks.
All right, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Nice camera hog, Brooke.
I don't know how to turn